What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rate My Call. This is where we take a cold call that from a live rep and a real experience. I laugh because it is real. It's not. We're not faking it. It's real. It's a real call. And what we're going to be doing here is breaking it down. And we have Jed here on the show. Jed, tell us a little bit more about us, you, and then let's get into it.
Yeah, for sure. I am the director of sales over at Mailshake. Been leading SDR for the last 4 or 5 years, so I'm excited to jump into this and listen to some cold call recordings.
All right, man. Let's get into it. Let's listen to the call.
Hello, speaking.
Hi, is this
It is.
awesome? Hi, this is calling from. How are you today?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So, you may remember I sent you an email a couple of days ago. Don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but can I have just 30 seconds to quickly explain why I'm calling you today?
Yeah, I'm running into a meeting, but I can give you 30 seconds.
Okay, let's break that down. What you think of the intro, Jed?
So I'm a big fan of. I know some people hate on it, but like my go-to opener has always been, "Hey Morgan, this is Jed over at so and so company. I sent over an email, maybe regarding whatever personalization I put in the email. Does the name sound familiar? Can I take 30 seconds to tell you why I'm calling?" That's my favorite opener, and I love that he did that. But what I don't love is that he asked 2 questions before that. So when you're calling somebody, you should, like, if I'm calling you, Morgan, and somebody picks up, I should just expect it to be you. And he called by saying, "Hey, is this?" I'll just say Morgan, right? He confirmed that, right? And then he asked, "How are you doing today?" And the way I see it is like he asked 2 questions that had an opportunity for 2 rejections before he even really got into his opener. So I love the opener, but I think he could have removed those first 2 questions and just gone straight into it with, "Hey Morgan, you might have remembered I sent you an email. Can I have 30 seconds?" And if he started there, I think the opener would have been a lot smoother. But regardless, it sounds like he still ended up getting a conversation, which is the whole goal of an opener, anyways.
So this is a first. I disagree with you on one point.
Let's hear it.
I disagree. So I do not, and I despise the email opener.
Okay.
But here's why. You said something interesting, so I could see your point. But most of the time, people in this scenario
Yep.
will say, "Hey, did you check out my email?" and give no context.
Yeah.
I don't like that because, okay, what? Like,
Yeah.
this person's getting like 1,000 emails a day. Your email probably is not going to be remembered. And also, they didn't reply to the email, so there's no way they're going to remember that. And I feel like it sets a negative tone for that person, because now they're going to be like, "Wait, I don't remember that email. Who's this person again? I don't want to talk to this person." It just brings up things that are not positive in that regard. So that's why I typically don't like it. Now, your take is unique because you're calling out the personalization in the subject line.
Yeah.
I think that is a little bit different, and I could see that playing out if you did have some really good personalization. But without that piece that you added, I don't like saying, "Here's this email I sent," because it's just another email and you didn't really say anything beyond that. But I do agree with you on the asking too many questions in the beginning, because they're going to feel overwhelmed and overloaded, right?
Yeah.
So stick to one and go with that is my take.
Yeah, 100%. I think to your point on the email side of things, yeah, if you just call and say, "Hey, calling about that email I sent you, did you take a look at it?"
Yeah.
It's way too open-ended. But if you're prospecting based on like personalization triggers or buying signals that you're finding, for example, like maybe Morgan, if I'm calling you, it could be like, "Hey Morgan, I'm calling about that email I sent over regarding your partnership with Cognism.
Exactly.
Do you mind if I take 30 seconds to recap the email?" A bit more impactful, but yeah, I agree.
Awesome. All right, so let's continue on.
Sweet.
All right, awesome. Do you ever feel like there's just this a big chunk of email that's just not being answered, and everything's just not in the right place. Agents are just working on the email that's just it's to their liking, but it's not exactly what they should be working on. Do you ever face that kind of problem?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it can happen from time if you get some bad eggs.
Yeah, because a big company like you, you have this large amount of email questions not being answered is a big problem for you. Because if you have that problem, we can definitely help you with that. I'm actually calling you to tell you more about our software, iService, and how it is efficient in dealing with high volume email and chat interactions with customers, and how we can improve your workflow. So I'm actually calling to see if we could set up an appointment like 10 to 15 minutes. I know you're busy, so I'm not just going to take so much of your time. Could we set up an appointment for like 10 minutes tops for a discovery call?
Okay, so let's break down the value prop, how they went about it. What's your take?
Yeah, so my opinion on value props is that it should be the same for every single cold call for the most part. Like if you're pitching your product, you should have let me take a step back. When I'm doing a cold call, there's pretty much two things that are the exact same every single time. It's my opener and then it's my like initial 30-second pitch. And maybe I'll do a little bit customization based on them, but for the most part, it should be the same every time. It sounds like this person didn't feel super comfortable with their value prop because there was a lot of stuttering and a lot of filler words and just not a very cohesive couple of sentences. And I'm not I think having some filler words is fine because it makes you sound more natural and not like a robot. But I do think the pitch could have been worked on a little bit more. I think that's something you should repeat over and over until you just have it down like second nature. I do like how he asked a question around a problem, though. A lot of people just kind of like their 30 seconds or whatever is just like pitching, and then does that sound relevant? But like he mentioned a very specific problem, which, or I guess maybe not a super specific problem, but mentioned the problem of like high email volume and like how they're managing that. And then asked, is that a problem you're experiencing? So I do like that as long as you're crystal clear on what the problem is and you have a good understanding of if your prospects have that problem or not.
And you mentioned that you do the value prop pretty consistently every single time. What is like the ideal length that the value prop should be?
So the way, like a few sentences, like 20 seconds, because what all I'm trying to say is like, I guess mention any research I found. So like, looks like you're growing your team, typical, and then give like the typical or the kind of framework is what they're probably experiencing, and then what I'm hearing from people similar to them, and then asking if that's relevant. So it's basically 3 steps. Here's what I think you might be experiencing. Here's essentially like a way to solve that, and then does that problem sound relevant? And so yeah, typically around like 20 seconds, which I think this person was around that 20 seconds. It didn't feel too long.
Yeah. So I guess the question would be, if you were to look at this value prop before we go into the objection part of this call, what would you rate the value prop? You said to make it shorter. Like, what would you have taken out?
I'll rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe like a 5 or 6.
Okay.
It just didn't feel, I don't know about you, Morgan, but it didn't feel like I truly understood what he was saying. It didn't feel like super cohesive. I probably would have added a bit more like social proof. So he mentioned later that like, looks like you guys are a bigger company. Maybe if he started his value prop by saying like, hey, I noticed you're a bigger company, but maybe like got specific. Looks like you have X number of people in your department. Typically around this size is when people start struggling with high email volume. Do you ever feel like your team is missing out on catching up on those emails? And I'm not sure exactly if that's what the value prop is, but that's another way maybe I would have restructured it.
Yeah, I felt like it was. Yeah, I think what you're saying, it makes sense. Like for me, like I was like listening, I was like, okay, it felt like the main thing that he was trying to convey was just in multiple different lanes, and
Yeah.
like there was a lot of insight he wanted to share, but it was like, let me see which of these informations you're going to grab to, right? Instead of having it as a cohesive flow. That's what I heard.
Yeah, same here. It just, and I think it doesn't even need to, he doesn't really need to change the value prop that much. Just work on it until it sounds cohesive. Like one thing I like to do is just write it down in a Google Doc, read through every single word by word by word, take things out that don't make sense. Just kind of like, it's that one pitch that you're going to use for everybody else. Like make it perfect and optimize it to where it sounds the best.
Cool. All right, let's move on to the next part of this call.
We could. I think we've got a tool in place at the moment that is exactly like that, or it's kind of it's there to monitor that. I've forgotten the name. I'm really sorry, but yeah, like maybe like before I commit to a meeting, you could tell me. I mean, like before I commit to the meeting, I'm not sure like why I would move to you over this tool, which I think is working quite well.
Yeah, I totally understand that, but the thing is, sometimes you said yourself that you see this large amount of email not being answered, but with our software, you will not face that problem, and I'm confident it will improve your workflow very much. So, if you could just give me 10 minutes, I'm not just asking you to make a decision or, switch to it. It's 10 minutes, it's whatever. You can make time whenever you want, and I can just tell you about it. If you want to go with it, we want to know more, I can tell you more or not. It's totally up to you.
Yeah, so this part is interesting, right? There's already a tool in place. I'm curious how you handle it. My first thing that I want to call out, and I wrote it down, is when you say that you're confident that it will help, but you don't really have the information yet to say that it's confident. I don't like that, because you haven't done the discovery enough to figure out if there's a pain point enough to say, oh, now you're confident. It's just saying, hey, I'm confident because like this is just what I'm going to say in this moment, but it's not backed by your discovery. That was my take, but curious on what you think.
I agree. It's like he's pushing. It's the typical like, yeah, you haven't actually done any discovery, but it doesn't sound believable. What I might have done in his situation is it's tough because normally if someone says they have a tool and I know what tool that is, I want to like my strategy is like compliment them. So like, yeah, they're great at this, but one reason why people consider us is because of our core differentiator, right? And I don't know what that is for him, but he still could have taken that approach and said like, oh, that's great that you guys are already using a tool. Sounds like you're already invested in trying to solve this problem. How has it worked for you so far? Like, again, ask a couple more discovery questions before going back into your pitch and trying to get a meeting. So maybe you could have ended it with, how has it been working for you so far? Do you feel like you're getting all of your emails answered? And just dig a little bit deeper before trying to book the meeting again, because that'll help him figure out that information that, to your point, Morgan, he can use to actually give context to why he's confident that he can solve the problem.
Yeah. You got to dig in. You got to ask them about like the tool, like, okay, what's going on there? What do you like about it? I feel like just saying, hey, I'm confident. It's like that. I think that's a maybe a like yellow to probably on the verge of a red flag for a potential client to be like, okay, this person is just trying to sell me something. I'm going to move on.
Yeah, and I think the other point too is that people get like this happens a lot for me as well. Sometimes, like I'll be cold calling, I haven't got connected in a while, and you finally have a conversation, you get super excited, and you're like, oh, this person's going to hang up on me at any moment. I got to go for the meeting. I got to go for the meeting, and you forget that like if they've already started a conversation with you, you typically have the right to ask a few more questions, and it shows that you're of equal business stature as opposed to like being the person who's just trying to push for a meeting. So I think this person probably felt a bit of that where they were like, oh, I got to get to that meeting. But you really have more time if you've already started the conversation.
100%. Cool. All right, let's move to the final ending of this call here.
Yep.
I think I think for now, actually, maybe I can get one of my team on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. When are they available?
I don't have their calendar in front of me. But perhaps like we could tentatively put something in for Wednesday next week.
Okay. Sounds good. Awesome. What time are you available?
Let's say 3 p.m.
All right. Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much for your time today.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, it sounded he got some tentative time, but anything you would have done differently to end that call there?
Yeah, I think it's good, right? Because he got a tentative time, but it sounds like a bit of happy years where he wasn't trying. He's like, okay, meeting, cool, I'm done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think maybe what he could have done is said, well, it sounded like the prospect was saying he's going to have somebody on their team take a meeting with him. I don't know if you heard that differently, Morgan, but it didn't sound like this guy was. So I would ask, cool. And before I schedule that meeting, do you mind telling me who this person is? And, what do you think they'd want to see the most in this call? So ask a couple more questions. And anytime I confirm a meeting, I do like to ask a couple more questions. So I'll typically say like, hey, great, just to make sure we get the most out of your time on Wednesday, do you mind if I ask you just a couple more questions so that we can, get right to it? And then ask a couple key questions that'll help you, do better discovery.
Yeah, I feel like those are all valid points across the board. Is there something that you would recommend overall as advice, but also in this call as an additional piece of what we're talking about here that people could remember to land the plane? Because I felt like this is one of those scenarios where like you're about to land the plane, but then you kind of go a little bit rogue and you don't land in the right way. The wheels are kind of squeaky, it's like you almost crash. Like, how do you land this a little bit more smooth?
I think the key thing is like never end a call on just booking a meeting. Like if somebody says, yeah, let's meet at this time, that shouldn't be the last thing you do before hanging up. You should have that final, like, I guess to break it down, the way I see a cold call is you have your stage one is your opener, then your value proposition or your pitch, then discovery and objection handling, closing for the meeting. And closing for the meeting shouldn't be the final piece. The final piece should be additional or qualification questions or confirmation questions. So to answer your question about how they could have landed the plane a little bit better is have those additional qualification questions. Great. It'll be 3 p.m. I'll send you a Zoom link. Can I ask you just a couple more things to make sure we get the most of your time while I have you here? And then maybe ask things like, can you make sure you come prepared with that tool that you mentioned you're using? I know you got to figure out what it is. Just kind of get all your ducks in a row, right? That's why I like having that final, do you mind if I ask you a couple more questions? Because you can just make sure you kind of crossed off all your boxes before actually hanging up the call.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because most people. I remember when I first scheduled my meeting as an SDR, I like blacked out when they said that they wanted to
Yeah.
meet, and like I didn't even get the next steps to be honest. Like it was not good. So I think to your point, in this moment, you need to understand what are the things that I need to check off so that I can go and be successful in whatever those things may be. So I think that's absolutely on point. So that was the end of the call. So the end of this, as how we wrap this up, is what would you rate this call out of 10, the whole thing, and why?
Okay, so for my scale, a 0 is going to be you just got hung up on, right? A 10 is you got a meeting, good notes, good pain, the meeting's confirmed, all that stuff. This person got a tentative meeting, so they're above a 5 in my opinion. I'm going to put them somewhere in the range of 6 to 7, and I think what would have got them to 10 is if they asked a few more discovery questions to uncover pain during that after that pitch, and then if they like kind of double down and confirm the meeting using the things we just talked about. So I'd say maybe like a 6.5.
6.5. Okay, that's solid. That's above the average, right?
Yeah.
We had Marcus on the episode, and he was like 5 is the average. So if it's above that, like you're above like the majority of reps. So I think that's solid. So
I would say they are.
Yeah. So Jed, appreciate your insights on this. Thanks for chopping up this cold call with us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah, for sure. This was fun. Thanks, everyone.